Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our one-on-one session. Here are our speakers. Reporter, The Wall Street Journal, Amy Chersich. CEO and co-founder, Empowered Media, Giancarlo Chersich. And President and co-founder, Empowered Media, Jillian Michaels.
Hello, thanks so much for coming. Excited to talk to you guys. And I'd love it if you could kind of start out with how you met and how you kind of established this partnership.
All right, so first off, good morning, everyone. I moved to LA in 2003 from New York City, and as soon as I got there, I asked a friend, what's a good place to work out with great private trainers? And someone told me this gym's called Sky Sport, and I ended up going to the gym. And a few months later, I ended up meeting Jillian, and the relationship flourished organically. She kind of got to know everyone that was a client in the gym and what you did and what you didn't do, and we just became friends that way.
I ended up finding out that Giancarlo was a licensing agent for a company at the time that was called Magna Global.
Right.
And I began talking to G, and I was saying, I want to do all this stuff, and I think I was already on my first season of Loser.
You had just started.
I just started Biggest Loser, and I was like, I have all these ideas, I want to do all this stuff, and he was like, well, let's keep talking, and would give me really solid advice. Yeah. And then down the road became my licensing agent, and then at one point he was like, you're going to need full-time help. Yeah. Yeah. And then we decided to form a company together. And it's been a lot of work for him from that point on.
So how far along in Biggest Loser were you when you decided to make that partnership?
It was the second season, and then the third season, I didn't do a Biggest Loser, and he basically said, it's way too soon for you to be walking off that show. Okay. You need to go back, you need to do season 4, you need to spend more time on that platform. And so subsequently, I took that advice, went back to the show, and here we are, 11 seasons later.
And this is your last season.
And now he's okayed me to leave.
So, sorry, America.
In an effort to, of course, I want to focus this year on adoption and starting a family, but of course we're still working on all the various aspects of our business. But in the future, my goal is to focus on a daytime platform where we can engage America in the necessary conversations of improving the quality of your life. And of course, as a very dear friend who's sitting in the front row there has told me, it's about uplifting, informing, inspiring, and entertaining.
Well, I definitely want to get back to daytime, but first I just want to talk about that kind of expanding your image beyond the Biggest Loser, and how do you make it that you're not just this, feisty trainer from the reality show? How did you grow that? I have to defer to G, because I had no idea how to get around that. And it was, I went to him and I was like, I just want a name. I don't want people to see me in the street and go, oh, it's that trainer girl. How do I get a name? How do I become Jillian? How do I reach that status? And I'll let him answer that question.
Yeah, the short in it, first off, you've got to recognize great talent when you've got great talent. And you've got to make sure that they shine in an environment where they become invaluable to whoever you're working with. And really the strategy for us early on was, how do you get to those companies via a cold call and make them focus on you? And all we had at inception was great talent, as well as a television platform, which is so fundamentally important in growing. It used to take 15 to 20 years to grow a brand. Now you can do it overnight. We've seen a lot of the short-lived success stories, but the trajectory that we're on will hopefully allow us, knock on wood, to have a long-lasting career that makes sweeping changes, and our legacy, ends up being that we made the world a healthier place across all aspects of wellness. So with that, it was really knowing who are some key allies and convincing them to get a taste of Jillian without having to spend a dime, and let the consumers react back to her involvement with whether it was a publication, a TV show, a radio interview, a live event, a speaking engagement, and then fortunately, with social media and all those sorts of tools that we have today, it spreads virally very quickly. And our position was, and I'll say this because this is the way, I really believe in vision boards, and you've got to visualize what you want to create. And I remember showing Jill a slide that a friend of mine who's in here helped me put together, and it basically outlined the key women in each aspect of their category. So it was Oprah was lifestyle, Martha was home, Rachel was food, Susie was money, Ellen was comedy, but there was no one that fit the wellness bucket. And when you put Jill front and center, not in workout clothes, but let's say in that type of photograph that you see up there, it made a lot of sense. And that's really what the path has been. So we've stayed course to that. And there are a lot of ways to get there, but we've been fortunate where Jillian's such a strong talent. The transformations that she's generated on television have allowed America to really see what she's made of. So
I think you need to have a long-term view, because my favorite example of what he's talking about is Self magazine. And this was at a time when I could barely get featured in Self, despite the fact that I was an incredibly successful trainer, let alone get on the cover. No one would touch a reality star for the cover, and it's even debatable whether I was a reality star at that point or not. So Giancarlo got on the phone with Lucy Danziger, who was editor-in-chief of Self. God knows how you got her on the phone. And I mean, I know top publicists that can't get this woman on the phone. And he basically said, you know, you're missing out. She's really got so much to offer. And he volunteered me to do something called
Workout in the Park.
Workout in the Park for them. And he said, just give her an opportunity. We'll do this for free. We'll come and what have you. And it ended up going from like 3,000 to 4,000 the year prior to 10,000. And then we got a feature. And then, you know, he went to Lucy shortly after that and said, look, we've been contributing very successfully. I need a cover from you. I need you to do this for me. And he'd formed that relationship with her, and we had delivered on our side, and she gave us the first cover. And then it performed well, and subsequently, Ladies' Home Journal, Shape, Health, Fitness,
Book, yeah.
Women's Health, Red Book. After that, but he knew exactly which dominoes to knock over to set the whole thing off, and guided me along the way. Like, I need you to perform here, and I need you to do it this way, and I want to have this impact and this result. Focus on X, Y, and Z. And so with that, it's like I know how to put one foot in front of the other when you tell me exactly what steps to take, because business is not my forte. I can tell you how to lose 10 pounds. I can tell you how to improve the quality of your life, but this is Greek to me.
And you were okay with being patient in terms of building that relationship.
I learned that I did not have a choice.
Yeah, this is, you know, I had 3 rules for Jill. I said, no sex tape, no DUI, and don't buy stock in companies we do business with unless I say it's okay to do so. And I said, I don't want to hear that you're tired or you don't want to do it, because that is not acceptable. It's just not, because when,
Sounds
you know,
like your
with
training mantra.
it's exactly. But, you know, with her her job function comes great responsibility. So, you know, you can't let people down. And that's what it boils. But her work ethic is impeccable. It really is.
I get a little whiny every now and again. But then, you know, we refocus on the big picture, and I do truly love my work and what I do. So I'm extremely fortunate that it's where I find meaning and passion. And I think with any endeavor you pursue, you have to be passionate about it. There has to be meaning in it for you in order to do and put in all of those hours, because that's what it does require.
Giancarlo, you worked with Tommy Hilfiger previously. I'd love it if you could talk about that experience and how you've kind of used what you learned with building him up as a designer.
You know, I was fortunate to start at Tommy Hilfiger as an intern back in 1995. So the company was only 100 employees with a revenue stream of $100 million and didn't really have an international presence at the time. And what I very quickly learned, which I've applied to this business, was Tommy was bold and brave by saying that he was the great next American designer. And all he did was put out a billboard in Times Square that listed, it said the great American designers, and it said the letter R dash dash dash, the letter L dash dash dash. And it went on for the C and K and then P and E, which stood for Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, and Perry Ellis. And underneath it said Tommy Hilfiger. So he automatically associated him as the next great American designer. And these people have been in business for, you know, 10, 20, 30 years as brands. And what I learned there was that he owned it. He owned it in every which way of it. And from the strategy of rolling out the business, where like, we don't have the infrastructure as a company to make this a popular brand internationally, but Estee Lauder does, so we did a fragrance deal. And the fragrance went out internationally, which paved the path for the brand. So a lot of and I have great respect for the 4 partners at that company, and I'm still in contact with them as mentors, but I really respected what they did because they did it organically. It made sense. You know, at a certain point they became too much to too many people and kind of lost a little bit of their identity, but they've sold that company 3 times over for $1 billion plus each time, so I think they've done pretty well.
You're in 2 Super Bowl ads.
Yes.
You are, I see your face every time I go to the drugstore.
Sorry.
You've got a new book.
Yes.
I wonder, in building the brand, how do you make sure that you don't reach overexposure?
You know, we are extremely discerning about what we take on and what we do. So every partnership that we engage in, is organic and authentic. So, for example, GoDaddy was chosen for a specific reason. I began to kind of develop this image of being extremely hard and kind of cast iron and she's a bitch and what have you. And what I loved about GoDaddy is that it allowed me to be softer, it allowed me to be sexy, it allowed me to be feminine, but not in a gratuitous way or any way that was exploitive, and still be powerful and still be great at what I do and be a strong female. And I thought that was really nice to present myself in that way. And in addition, Super Bowl, 100 million people. It's something, it's iconic, and to be part of pop culture in that way is advantageous. And then, of course, Giancarlo, in his always thinking, is building a corporate wellness program that he's testing out with GoDaddy. Yeah. So that's another reason that we engaged in that partnership. And if it works for us there, then it's something that we want to build out for other corporations. But when you look at partnerships I'm in with regard to food, we don't do endorsement deals when it comes to food. So, because I can't be on a 100-calorie snack pack. I can't get engaged in that because I don't believe in it. With that said, he looked at that model and decided, Jill, here's what we're going to do. We're going to find companies we believe in, like Pop Chips, like So Delicious Coconut Milk, and we're going to invest in them, and we're going to do this backwards. We're going to buy stock in those companies, and then you're going to talk about how much you love the product. And we're going to try to build out their distribution channels, and it'll pay off in the long run, and we're doing the right thing for the brand and for the country because these are quality products that should be out there. So everything that we do is organic to our message, organic to the information that we put in the world, and even with something like the fat burners, which I am so disappointed about how that whole thing went down. But the original idea was there's so much in the market that's bad for you and dangerous for you. And there are natural products that can enhance metabolism and are such a healthier option or alternative. And to make a long story short, the perception was taken badly, lesson learned, wasn't worth engaging in.
Sorry, walk us through what those are and how the criticism that you've gotten for endorsing that.
The perception, I had presumed that people had read previous books of mine or listened to podcasts where I had talked about supplements and the good, the bad, the indifferent, but the majority of the American public had not. So when they see fat burners, they immediately thought I was suggesting that you didn't have to work out or you didn't have to exercise, and I had sold out. And no matter how often you say, no, this is not meant as a supplement, this is meant to accelerate your weight loss, your diet, and your exercise program, it's a natural alternative, it doesn't matter. The perception on those products is not a good one. And so, lesson learned, and as a brand, we pay close attention, and probably when that contract runs out, we won't engage in that deal again, just because it's not worth it. It's not worth the fight. It's like, okay, when it's done, it's done.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, as you get bigger, there are these challenges. You've got a couple lawsuits going right now. How do you maintain the brand?
Subsequently, they've been dismissed, but no one talks about them being dismissed. So, but here's a really good lesson, and this is something that we've learned over the course of the last year, is that you cannot kowtow to anyone, because people are going to come, competitors are going to plant stories, they're going to take shots at you, and Dr. Phil actually sat both of us down and said, I'm going to tell you guys the same thing I told Oprah. You do not settle one of these lawsuits. You fight everyone and everything that comes out against you, because the line at the, Sue Empowered Media, Jillian Michaels window is going to get significantly shorter. And with that said, we've fought every lawsuit, and 3 of the 4 are already dismissed. Nevertheless, you take the hit in the press, and that's the goal, because often a competitor will hire class action lawyers to file these bogus lawsuits.
With bogus plaintiffs.
Not to actually win the suit, but to create the public the damage to your brand for their competing product. And lesson learned, and you have to just fight them, and that's part of being in business, and you learn these hard lessons. And I think that's really important, is that you do learn these lessons and then you evolve.
The other thing to add to that that's very important is sometimes when the train leaves the station, while your intentions are always, in our case, 100% pure, you kind of get railroaded by all these other artificial pressures that aren't yours. Retailers, all these sorts of things. So what you really have to do is you've got to be, I've now gone from creating business to being a sheriff, because all I do all day long is police all these destructive mechanisms that are in the marketplace, as great as they are for our business, there is a lot of destruction out there that occurs, and if you are not on top of it, from something as simple as a fake Facebook page to
20 fake Facebook pages.
You know, it's technology and just the speed that things happen nowadays. Right. You really have to be on top of your business, and you cannot trust, even though you've got a licensee on board with you, you cannot trust their people to take care of your business the way you would.
And they have competing agendas, often.
Absolutely.
Often.
So we've set up our company to have a key operations person that we brought in from the finance world, and then we have brand managers, and those brand managers report into Jill and I, and there is not one thing that we do not scrutinize. Not one thing. Everything goes through us. Reason being, because at the end of the day, when the shit hits the fan, it comes back to her and I. So if we okayed it, then we know that we stood behind it and we were okay with it, and legal takes a different position than it just kind of going through the filter.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of lessons learned, what have you learned from doing Losing It with Jillian?
So much. On many different fronts, you know, personally, it affected me very deeply and pushed me over the edge with regard to wanting to start a family, because I was living with families, with kids, and recognizing how much I was actually missing in my own life. As a business professional, we got railroaded into that. God bless NBC, and I am extremely grateful for the opportunity, but they gave us a window that was absurd. It was undoable. We had 3 showrunners walk off and say, this can't be done. This cannot be produced in this time frame. It was a weight loss show with 6 weeks from start to finish with people that were 300-400 pounds overweight. So it's like you come back, they've lost 50 pounds, and you're like, what a fabulous outfit they've changed into, and their makeup looks really good. It was not visual. We were being forced to edit a show that we didn't know the end of it yet. So you can't create an episode when you don't know the end of the show. And you know, they were editing it and then throwing it up on television. We didn't even know what the show was. We didn't know the format. We didn't have an opportunity to streamline it. And you know, I knew it. And this was my lesson of 2010. I knew we were being rushed. I knew we were being railroaded, and everybody who was advising us at the time, this is an incredible opportunity. Don't blow it. Take the ball and run with it. This is your own primetime show. Shut up, shut up. Don't complain, don't complain. And then I got a threatening call from a network executive.
Who will remain unnamed.
Yeah,
yes.
he knows who he is. And threatened me and basically was like, you better shut up, you know, or we're going to rethink our whole relationship with you. And I went to a place of fear, which will never happen again, and I allowed this to happen. And the show got moved 4 times, and it went through just a whole host of bad circumstances. It was up against the playoffs. It was preempted by Obama's speech. And the lesson was this: I knew it was wrong. I knew it wasn't going to work. And I allowed myself, and G and I felt like we were just caught up in this river, you know, and we allowed ourselves to get forced into a situation that we knew had tremendous problems. And here's the thing: had I said no, had I forced it to go the way that I knew it would have gone, it doesn't matter what this network executive would have said to me, because the show would have rated well and he would have picked it up anyway, whether we liked each other or not. And that's what you need to remember, and this is what we've said to all of our partners subsequently, because we got in a conversation with K-Swiss, who's a fabulous partner, but they wanted to close out by a certain time to meet a certain deadline, and I said, I don't want to hear deadline from you. I never want to hear that word again. Nothing leaves this room, nothing goes to retailers until it is perfect, until we believe that it's perfect collectively. Mm-hmm. And they were like, okay, all right. And you know what? The clothes look fabulous. The word on the street is fantastic. We had all these editors out from WL. They loved everything, and it's going to work. So I might be a bitch for demanding that, but when we make them a ton of money, they're not going to care. And that's the thing. You have got to trust your instinct. And you know who gave me the smackdown on that was Susie Orman. She ripped me a new one, and she's like, did you know it was a problem? Yes, Susie. You know, the cookbook went out without pictures. We got railroaded. We don't have time. We got to meet this deadline. We'd have to send it to China. A cookbook without pictures. Who does that? We got forced into it. Forced into it. Same thing. That's what 2010 was for me, getting railroaded.
But I look at the positive and everything, and what losing it did do, losing it proved to us that Jill, 5 days in a home with a family and then leaving, they continued to lose the weight. Months later, we had a wellness cruise in October, and the father from the Alvarez family here in Miami had lost 100 pounds. So it's a testament to who she is and what she brings. So while that whole scenario might have been not ideal, again, it reinforced her position in the marketplace as a leader in wellness.
The Susie Orman conversation sounds like it could have been its own reality.
She loves to rip me a new one. And you know something? I'm grateful for it, because here's something that you should really seek out. Seek out a mentor that can give you feedback, and let your ego go, because you need that feedback to make the necessary changes. You can practice at something for hours and you'll just potentially ingrain the same mistakes and the same bad behaviors. But when somebody has the opportunity to come in and provide that feedback and help you learn from a mistake you made, well, then it's an invaluable lesson. It's an incredible point of entry for wisdom, and the next time I'm up at bat, I will not make those same mistakes. So again, lesson learned on a host of fronts.
I'm going to ask one more question, then we can open it up for questions. You mentioned daytime.
Yes.
Everything everyone says is that it's so difficult to have a syndicated daytime show. It's a cluttered market, fewer people are watching.
Yes.
What makes you think you can break through? What would you do differently to break through?
We have a lot of different thoughts about this, and the way that we're approaching it is very different. So we're talking to independent syndicators. And with that said, you know, it's not about the agenda of, again, I don't mean to alienate anyone, but when you look at the bigger syndication houses, they have very specific agendas. And it's like, you may be, you know, at 3 in the morning here because they've got a bigger talent and they need to leverage you to do this, that, the other. So I think independent syndicators are going to be more invested and more flexible. With that said, I don't believe that this platform is dead. I just think times are changing. You know, we look at, I remember when I was a kid, I would come home and I would watch Rosie at 3, I would watch Oprah at 4, and there was no Facebook, there was no TiVo, there was no on-demand, and I appreciate that. But I think that we are already seated in all those other various forms of media, and if we can find a way, maybe it's streaming the show online every day, live at a certain time. It could be, you know, driving people back to the online, radio, podcast, so that we capture our audience and we make it, you know, appointment television. We create things that are entertaining and informational, that it's like, oh my God, did you see? Did you know? You've got to watch this. There's a way to do it, and we're definitely working on figuring out that model, and it will require reinventing the wheel a little bit, but the reality is, primetime is not a place where, primetime is a dogfight, and it's scandalous, and people want to come home and veg out and watch Wipeout. You know, they want to see somebody get hit with a giant rubber glove and knocked into the pool. They've had a long day. But daytime, I think, is where you can engage America in a conversation about changing the world, and that's where they're receptive at that time. And I don't know. I can't tell you. It could be a mistake. We might be sitting here or not a couple years from now with the I told you so conversation, but I don't feel that I have a choice. I feel that for what we want to accomplish, that is the platform we need to establish and be innovative.
The other thing to that is, as great as The Biggest Loser has been out as a platform, it's limited in what it shows Jill's capacity to be. So while she's hit the ceiling there, what daytime will allow, and we are making sure, like our new book, Unlimited, comes out April 5th, which is a how-to self-help book. Jill's coming back to radio via podcast. We're gonna be doing more live speaking engagements. So really setting up the environment for the consumers to expect this type of information from Jillian. Nothing's really changed since the start, because that's how she got these contestants to lose that type of weight. But now it's in a forum where she might not necessarily be the expert, but she can ask those tough questions or ask the questions that people are thinking. So, you know, we've hopefully, you know, fall 2012, which is our timetable for this, hopefully we know we want to build the model. I don't want to come out and be #1 immediately, but we want to have that slow, steady build and make sure that we wrap all these other mechanisms around Jill to ensure success. You know.
Great. So. Does anyone have any questions? Hi.
I currently have a television show that is nationwide. It's only 20 million viewers, but it's a start. I want to.
I think Influencer had 8 million last week.
I want to build a brand like you're doing. I love the fact that you're here. I'm sure everyone appreciates that you showed up. All the advice you're giving is just something you can't, replace. As far as you said something about earlier about being rushed. My first episode, we have a deadline. And then it went out. I didn't approve it. I didn't think it was great. and then, oh, that was the worst thing we've ever seen in our lives. I mean, it was just amazing. You're saying everything, and I lived it. It's very interesting. But what would you suggest as a person such as myself who has a show? It's nationwide. Everyone haven't seen it yet, but I'm building myself right now. So what would you suggest as someone who had something? I have visibility, but it's not worldwide yet.
Well, congratulations on what you've built in thus far, but what is the premise of, The
premise of the show is I go around the country and I interview different celebrities and chefs, and it's a lifestyle show. And it's called Donna's World. And basically you're in my world and you're basically going around with me, you're traveling and you're meeting different people and seeing what it's like to be me.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the real answer to that.
Okay.
You got to ask yourself, does someone need something from you in their home, outside of television? Number one. Number two, if you were going to create a brand, who's your competitor? What's the landscape look like? And number three, you've got to understand that consumer dollars are short and tight. So the last thing someone needs is another this or another that. We've purposely passed on a lot of opportunities because I just feel that I don't need another pot and pan. I don't need this. But what I do need is I need the ability to lose weight and keep it off for the rest of my life. And I know that I have a product that does that. So those are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself, because what will happen is you will spin your wheels and you'll go to all these meetings and all of a sudden you'll turn around and be like, God, you know what? I don't think I can do this because the market doesn't need it. Anytime that you put a product in the market space, something else has to come out. So that's what you've got to think about. How are you going to outperform and outsell and get more visibility for something that's currently on a shelf space to swap your product out? So that's really the question you've got to ask yourself. I'll tell you a true story. Jill's first round of DVDs never sold well. Never sold well. Her second round of DVDs sold incredibly well, phenomenally well. And now our third round that we're now producing ourselves, hopefully we'll have the same type of trajectory. Same Jillian Michaels, just it wasn't set up the right way. So that's what you have to ask yourself. You're welcome.
Hi, my name's Bill Lucas, and I have a question for Giancarlo.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about your direct-to-consumer strategy when it comes to digital media? I heard you say something about DVDs, and now with the technology available, you have so many ways to go directly to the consumer.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit of your strategy, perhaps, or your philosophy about direct-to-consumer.
Yeah, I'll tell you about more of the philosophy. I can't really talk about our current deal that hasn't been announced, but yeah, we recognize that digital is the wave of the future. We're living it in the moment right now. And what we realize also that the cost to entry in the digital space is way less than anything that you've got to produce with big cameras and crew and all of that sort of stuff. And so for us, basically what we want to be able to do is add another layer to our virtuous circle of content that we distribute by making digital an option. It's the a la carte model. It's you consume it when you want. So we'll be getting into stuff called multi-training live. So we might have a very successful DVD platform with one title, but after you've worked out for a month or 2 months, it doesn't mean anything to you till our next release. So why not have Jillian in a studio that people can feed via whether it's iTunes or Netflix or online, and let people consume the a la carte model for $1 or $2, sign up a week for a bikini boot camp 6 weeks before summer. So we're looking at all these things, and we want to expand it to, wellness talks or, current event topics and how they apply to wellness. Or, Jill has this idea right now where she wants to take over a farm, convert it to an organic farm, and try to reverse the farm bill to get more monies to organic farmers. I mean, all these sorts of things. But if I had to go sell that on TV, that's a hell of a feat. If I could put it up digitally and let it consume. I mean, you start looking at the views on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a flip camera or a handheld camera, and it goes up via upload, and now it's out there to consume. Then you can build your business around it because there are a lot of great ideas that then can turn into TV, and you've got great agents in town that can make those things happen. And you just have to always be talking about what you're doing too. You've got to put it out there. You can't expect people to know to go find you. You've got to talk about it.
I think something else that's interesting about this time we're living in is that the gatekeepers are all disappearing.
Yeah.
No one can tell you what they're going to put in their stores. I mean, they can, but the reality is Jay McGraw, Dr. Phil's son, self-published a book called The 17-Day Diet. and he made $1 million the first week. It's not on Amazon. It's not in Barnes & Noble. Created an ebook, created an audio book, and that was it. $1 million. Had one hit on The Doctors, and they did a little series about it. So, for us, it's like we can start just publishing our own books. We can start producing our own DVDs. We can produce stuff and put them in our store. Yeah. We can, with that model, even the networks, I wonder how much longer is that going to last? It's going to be a digital home in the future. The internet, your television, is all going to be on the same box. You're going to be able to download whatever you want, whenever you want, and if you have the money to produce content, it's going to be out there on channels like YouTube, what have you.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, but thanks so much for coming, and thanks for your questions.
Oh, you had one question.
Do you want one more?
Yeah, go ahead. Don't worry, the poor man's been standing there.
Thank you very much. Stephen Wolf from MediaVest. A lot of the conversation has been on consumers and certainly on the networks, on the distribution side. I'm curious to see what your opinion is on corporate brands, trying to understand how do brands that are organically tied to your philosophy with what you stand for, how do you see an opportunity for brands in your entertainment?
This is such a great question. I think, first of all, the public has become very savvy. So, for example, Biggest Loser takes all this money from brands that, in my opinion, don't necessarily belong on the show, that probably aren't the healthiest products out there. And in those particular instances, I'm not the talent involved in those, quote, integrations. With that said, I think the public smells that a mile away. They resent it. They reject it. I think it hurts the ratings of the show. I think it's the reason the show's never been nominated for an Emmy. And I don't think it's doing those brands any favors, because people are like, oh, there's trickery involved. There's something going on here. I smell a rat. I think that you have to be 100% transparent. And there's a big food company that I'm actually working with, General Mills, and some of their products are great, some of their products are terrible, and they appreciate that. And so the conversation becomes, make yourself transparent to the public, admit where you have flaws, admit that you've made these changes, that you have this plan to make a difference. For me personally, I cannot take money from those companies because I lose my credibility, and that is not the goal. The goal here is to make healthier options accessible to the public en masse. So what we can do is say, look, we'll go in and we'll consult with General Mills. We'll help them make the necessary changes in their food products. We'll sing their praises about the great things that they're doing, and we can get involved in co-ventures like a free website for mothers that want to learn how to begin healthy habits for their family. Or possibly they can sponsor a speaking tour with Susie and myself called Healthy and Wealthy, brought to you by General Mills. And in that way, I can get into business with those people, or they can help fund a television show that puts healthy information into the world where they don't do integrations. And then the advantageous aspect for them is they fund a television show, they give it to a station group, they ask for a discounted rate on advertising, but they don't do integrations. And if there's a segment about something they're doing that's positive, a change that they've made, a drastic reduction in sodium, you can talk about that, or you can say this is brought to you by General Mills. Be transparent. Our buddies at General Mills are paying for this segment here today. And I think people will understand that, but you have to be transparent with them. And then they'll allow for you to, okay, I see this is going to take a little bit of time making these changes, that you're working on it. They're very forgiving, but you have to be honest and transparent at all times.
And to add to that, a lot of these big corporate companies practice what we call stealth health because they really can't be out there patting themselves on the back. So, when you can recognize the good that they're doing, it's good for them, and it's good for America, because let's be realistic. Those are the brands that are going to create those small changes that will create long-lasting, sweeping change. So you've got to give them, you
have to work with them.
You've got to work with them.
No choice, or you won't be able to affect change.
I mean, look, Walmart just announced that they're going to make their food brand healthier. Their own private label. We know the guy that created 365 for Whole Foods, and that's something he did 8 years ago. And now the bigger box retailers are looking at it and saying, we've got to do this too. It's out there in the atmosphere. You cannot ignore your wellness, and people want solutions, and they're tired. Maria Rodale said something very interesting the other day. The reason why people reject organic so much is because of its cost, but that's actually the true cost of food. We're just used to consuming foods that are processed and artificially made and chemically induced, so you reject it. And since when is cheaper better for food? You know what I mean? You know that if you buy a cheap pair of shoes, it's going to hurt your feet at the end of the day. It's going to cut you this and that. So it's the same thought process. So it's really getting America and the rest of the world, because our efforts are global, to change and think differently. So
I think with that, I have to wrap it up. But thanks so much for coming and
thank
your
you.
questions. Thank you.
Got nothing to do. We could have one of those days where we talk and we lay in the sun.